I was muted. There we go. The perils of tech. I was muted. We're ready to go here. Thanks so much for joining me today. Appreciate it. Thanks for pointing that out, Edward. A little bit of a technical hiccup when you're running these things on your own from the get-go. If you want to back the campaign, you can click on this link in the chat. I'll also put it in the description a little bit later. We've already got some backers that we only launched the campaign about 10 minutes ago. We've seen a little bit of backing out of the gate. I will show you as we get things started what we are. You still can't hear me, eh? You should be able to hear me now. There we go. Can you hear me okay? Let me know. Give me a thumbs up. There we go. Joyce, Christina, you can hear me now. Can everyone hear? Let's turn this on and make sure I can. Yeah, there we go. Oh. Interesting. But no, can you hear me is the question. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Michael. All right, I'm just trying to get a sense of whether or not I can hear on my my live stream here. Perfect. Awesome. All right, great. So we have some backers already, which is great. And if you want to share that link with your network far and wide, I would appreciate it. The goal is, by the way, here is the mock-up of the cover. You can see right now, camera's focused on the mic. Now it'll be focused on me. So here is the mock-up cover. Now, this will not be the final cover. If you're backing the campaign and you're like, well, Mike, I don't know if I like the cover. In fact, people who back the campaign, one of the things that I've noticed over the years, especially with Kickstarter, is it's really important for you to, it's important to communicate with the backers that you have, people who are supporting the way that the program is kind of done. And people want to be part of that process. Christina, this will be no longer than an hour. I've got a couple of guests coming on, one at the 20-minute mark and one at the 40-minute mark that's tentatively scheduled. So it's good to see. We got a handful of people here in the live stream right now. And I'm going to go over some of the things that you can expect, not just in the book, but over the course of this campaign, some of the benefits. You can see right now we've got 4 backers to get things started. It's a 27-day campaign. If you take a look, you could see that we have the concept of the book, the campaign. It ends on World Productivity Day, which I think is kind of fitting. And realistically, what this will do is using this campaign will help recoup some of the costs of the self-publishing. We're committed to doing it, but the idea behind it's a lot like what John Lee Dumas did with the Freedom Journal. It's a lot like what I've seen other authors do. In fact, when we were putting this campaign together, we did a lot of research around, authors that have had successful book campaigns, big and small, from as big as Brandon Sanderson to as small as Joanna Penn. Natalie Sisson did one a number of years ago. And so the idea here is to kind of, even though the cost of self-publishing through who I'm working with is more than what the campaign is asking for, I think that it's really important to not charge for all of the fees that are associated with it. So we're really just trying to help support the publication of the book, which includes things like professional editing. I was actually going through the last self-published book I did, which I actually have right here, which is the Productivityist Playbook. And so the last time I did this book, one of the things that someone pointed out, and we had an editor that went through the book, but flow was a problem. We're having a professional editing team likely work on this book through a self-publishing house. When it comes to design of book covers and stuff, that's going to be handled there as well. The other thing is we were unable to do audiobooks professionally in the past with my other books. This time we'll be able to do that. There will be an audiobook version. In fact, if you look at the campaign, you could see some of the perks. There is, of course, the $5 support, which is a thank you, the ebook, but look there, $15 audiobook. So the audiobook is something that we haven't been able to do easily in the past. And now we're kind of getting to the point where we'll be able to do that with this campaign. And there's a bunch of other perks involved. There's early bird stuff for the first 50 backers at the $50 level, I believe. You get access to the Ready Retreat. And I know some people who have been involved with the Ready Retreat in the past have, and I'm going to scroll through. Again, you can see here, if we go back, you can see that here is the early bird bundle, which gets you all 3 versions of the book on different platforms, but also a $200 access to the Ready Retreat, which is a live virtual retreat that's done. Hi, Vanessa. Good to see you. And ultimately what it does is it kind of allows people, we got 2 people already backing at that level. It's going to help you get ready to move forward. That's one of the things you get to work with me. It's a full virtual retreat. And then one of the higher level backing areas, which we get to the very end here, is you get access to Time Crafting Mastery, which is a group cohort that I run. I've run it a couple of times in the past. It's transformed from Beyond Productivity to the Elite Time course. Now it's called Time Crafting Mastery. And we run that, we're going to run it close to 3 times a year. And the next session will be in the fall. Backers after the campaign, whoever backs at that level, they'll get access to that likely before the book is ready to go. So, Andrew, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Andrew, Andrew, you've got a book that came out too. Feel free to throw that into the chat, a link to your book in the chat. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your support, and also the mention in the book too. Actually, it's one of the things that helped fuel the writing process for me. And some of you know the process of getting this book to market has been challenging for a number of reasons. All my doing in that, I had a small book deal with a minor publisher. I didn't do my homework when we put that deal together, and things like not being able to read my own audiobook came out. There was a lot of things that kind of sidetracked the process of writing, to the point where I was not even really interested in writing the book. It reminds me of a story of Merlin Mann, who was writing a book back when he was first starting in the productivity space. And he ended up not writing the book, and I think it had a lot to do with just not being happy with the way things were going in the process. And so I don't think Merlin's released a book. I didn't want to be that because I'm a writer, so I wanted to make sure. Thanks, Andrew. Lee, good to see you as well. It's been a while. So this book, originally we were going to have a book called Time Crafting. You may have gone to Amazon. You may have heard me talk about it. That book died on the vine. This book is essentially, I wouldn't say it's replacement, but it is kind of rose from the ashes of that book. And what's great is that I have others that I'm exploring in different veins, not necessarily the self-publishing route, but this one I wanted to make sure I had control from beginning to end. For those of you that don't know who Brandon Sanderson is, Brandon is someone who is a very well thought of and incredibly high selling fantasy author, and he went and launched a campaign, I want to say a little over a year ago, and it was massively successful. And the reason he did it, if you ever get a chance to watch his video, and you can watch it on YouTube, his announcement video, is because he wanted to have agency and control over how his books were sold. He wanted to be able to sell them in bundles, like we're doing here, for example. We can, if you're taking a look here, the book bundle in and of itself, and by the way, if you're going to back at that level, back at the early bird level, because you're going to get all 3 copies of the book, paperback, audiobook, and an ebook copy of it. So you've got all the different platforms, plus the Ready Retreat value, which is all part of that level. And then once that's done, then you get a copy of this, just the 3. That's what Brandon did. And the reason Brandon did that was because some people want to be able to listen to the book. I've had many people say, hey, I want to listen to the book that you've written in the past. I want to listen to the front 9. I want to listen to the Productivityist playbook. And I want to hear you do it. This book is definitely more of the how-to book with some why-to in there, of course. And the idea behind this book, if you read the campaign, it's really, when you think about it, the idea of a diet, there's two different thought processes around it. And I think productivity has the same bent as well, is that diets tend to be, I'm going to go on a diet, right? So you go on a diet and you lose weight, or you gain muscle, or whatever it is. And again, I'm being very glib here, but the idea is that if you go on a diet and then you just do it temporarily, then all of the things that you tried to circumvent, keep at bay, the whole goal of going on the diet can go out the window. So really, diet is a lifestyle, and productivity is a lifestyle as well. The problem is, for a lot of productivity practices, and Andrew's alluding to the idea of productivity levels and all that stuff. And I appreciate the kind words there, Andrew. May put that in the Kickstarter campaign page. I might just copy and paste that comment. But the idea here is that productivity has become a lot about quantity. The idea, and you weren't far off, Don. You were not, Don, in the comments. Yeah, yoga pants. Nah, we're in the right vein. And here's the thing: is that unlike the front nine, for those of, if you bought the front nine and read it, let me know in the comments here. It's not laden with metaphor, like the golf metaphor or anything like that. There is mentioning, I don't know enough about fitness or diet or anything to be able to purport, this is exactly how this works. As a matter of fact, I have a personal trainer that I've worked with in the past, and there was a lot of stuff I learned from him along the way, strengthening your core, all the different things you can do to kind of get yourself in shape. That stuff gets thrown in there, but it's more about the idea of a balanced approach to your tasks, to your projects. I believe that productivity has kind of gotten away from us in a lot of ways. And I have an article actually coming out in Simplify magazine, Joshua Becker, who runs Becoming Minimalist, his magazine. And there's stuff in there about why productivity has kind of morphed into what it is now, and the bit of pushback against it. And I think that the past few years have seen a bit of pushback. So I think the time is right for this book, the idea of having a balance between quality and quantity. Joyce, thanks for reading both of those books. This book is my second full self-publishing effort. The front nine obviously was published through Diversion Books, and that's not to say I'm not going to go through traditional publishing means at some point in time, but the idea behind this book was to make sure that we got it, that we put it out there to the world, so that I have agency over, here's how, and time crafting comes into this book, of course, the framework, the philosophy, the approach that I teach. But I wanted people to be able to look at this and go, I want to avoid some of these empty calorie tasks that I've been doing. I want to understand tasks that I need to do and want to do, and then the ones that I, ought to do, how do I turn them into things I need and want to do? The idea of prioritization, the idea of reflection as a form of attention, and vice versa, all those things. Thanks, Vanessa, for backing. And by the way, again, the backing link is it'll be in the description here as well, but it's in the comments as well. I'll just drop it in here. You can check out the Kickstarter campaign, of course, by going to this link right here. Let's make sure it's it. And yep, there it is. So there is the Kickstarter link. You can back the productivity diet here. Oops. Sorry, everybody. I'm running a couple of things here. And by the way, I normally do beer or wine or something like that, or whiskey. This is straight up coffee, and decaf coffee at that. There's another thing. As of late, routine. Routine is important when it comes to diet, right? When it comes to both productivity and when it comes to other types of diet, like setting yourself up, creating boundaries around things, creating friction where maybe will doesn't have as much of a chance to fight back against something that is, so for example, not having soda pop in the house, or putting it in a place that makes it a little bit more, puts more friction in the way of you actually, avoiding soda pop. This is decaf coffee. This reminds me of Andrew Huberman talking about cortisol levels and all that stuff. So I still love the ritual of making coffee in the morning, but thank you, Christina. And thanks, Joyce. So basically at this point, I still have that ritual of making coffee in the morning, but I don't get the caffeine. I'll be having some caffeine a little later, probably as soon as we're done this launch party. I'll make some fine coffee by another Kickstarter-backed coffee house, September Coffee, based out of Ottawa, Canada. If you haven't had a chance to check out September Coffee, they've got a YouTube channel, and Kyle Rousel is really knows his coffee stuff. So you can check him out as well. Maybe I'll put some links in the description a little later about that. But to that end, decaf coffee. Who drinks decaf coffee? Most people think of decaffeinated coffee as, ugh, that's gross. Why would you bother? Coffee is a caffeine delivery device for me. So why would I not have the caffeine? Well, decaffeinated coffee is getting better and better. This stuff I'm drinking right now is this one's from Intelligentsia, and it's tasty. It's not bad. Same thing with things like non-alcoholic beer. There's a lot of things that have changed over the years that have allowed you to still indulge and enjoy. And productivity is the same. It's funny because we've seen the bullet journal method. Ryder Carroll has been on my podcast for. Ryder Carroll's had a successful campaign. Analog by Jeff Sheldon. He's had some success with his campaigns as well, whether it's the desk organizer that he's done, Gather, or the analog cards. There is no right or wrong way. There is no one and done option. And therefore, that's what a diet really is. It's a lifestyle. And that's what this book is promoting. It's not a book that necessarily you're going to read from cover to cover and never return to it. You may not read it from cover to cover in the first sitting. It may end up being a reference book for you. But I'm really excited about the way things are going. And we're getting some solid backing at this point. I mean, we've only started, and we're almost, so the goal is 7,000 Canadian. We're almost 1/7 of the way there, and we're 17 minutes into the campaign. And the social media posts are going out now. I still have some folks that, some of the relationships I've nurtured over the years, they'll be sharing it. So the whole point here was to make sure that we had enough to turn this, and again, I only have the cover. Oh, see, there's no right way to do it. This into something thicker, having the full draft done. And by the way, just so you know, this is the Productivityist Playbook. The Productivity Diet will be a thicker book than this. But I didn't want it to have filler. Hi, Brooks. Yes, coffee and beer that's literally, Brooks is saying, so what you're saying is coffee and beer make you more productive. Here's the thing. If you drink decaffeinated coffee and non-alcoholic beer, I don't think your productivity will suffer nearly as much as if you're doing caffeinated coffee and alcoholic beer. Just saying. And I have experience with both. So what do they say? Write drunk, edit sober. And good to see you in here, Brooks. I saw you a few weeks ago over on the mainland here. I'm going to be doing a webinar with Steve Dotto tomorrow to dive a little bit deeper into the productivity diet process. What's in the book, those kind of things. So I'm really excited to see what's going on here. We're now at, we're making our way through the campaign pretty early. Again, 4 weeks. We're ending it on World Productivity Day. We should see, excellent, Christina. Yeah, I mean, Joanna Penn, she did a book. Let me see if I can find it real quick here while we're on here. So I'll see if I can find a Kickstarter, Joanna Penn. And again, this is the whole idea behind this party is just to announce the launch and things like that. So she did, hers was called Pilgrimage, and this would be, let me see if I can find her campaign here. Let me see. I don't know that I can see it in here, but I will find her campaign. JF Penn. Go. And I don't really see it in here. Kickstarter. I'll find it if I can. But she did a book called Pilgrimage. And that was something that I was inspired by. So let's hit return. Here, we'll go into here. These are all ones that I don't think that are backed. These are all ones that are active right now. So if we go with JF Pen, and I know we're kind of, oh, that says if pen. Anyway, I know she did a campaign. She got about 25. I want to say she got about 25,000 for it overall over the course of a 4-week campaign, which I think is great. So there we go. Let's see if I can get her on here. Nope, I cannot see her at all in here. But if you look at other books that have been going on, and I'm looking down here, of course, if you look at other books that have been backed, there are quite a few. And I think that Kickstarter is a valid platform to raise funds for self-publishing efforts, but by far the amount of money that is required to self-publish a quality book is not going to be something that falls into that. Like I said, $7,000 Canadian. We are up to 10 backers now. Great. It's not going to fall necessarily into the $7,000 range. My estimates, depending on who you go with. So somebody like who published David Goggins' book, I think Cameron Harold's worked with them as well, which is Scribe, which used to be the Tucker Max book imprint. It was called Book in a Box. That runs in the neighborhood of about $20,000, I believe. Friesen Press, who I've looked at and likely will go with, those run, again, depending on, there's different levels and tiers. You can go as high as $18,000, which gets you, I think, the audiobook and the masterpiece selection. So there's lots of things. Now, Don, the Ready Retreat. Don's asking a question, which is great. So what the Ready Retreat is a 4-hour... and let's go into, I'll see if I can find it inside my Circle community here, because we do record it. So, and I don't know if anyone inside the live stream right now actually did take the Ready Retreat. I'm sure some of you did. The Time Crafting Trust Premium members, which is also a perk to become a member of Time Crafting Trust Premium for a year. So there's that. We had 102 people. Now, again, this includes not just people who purchased it, but annual members, Time Crafting Trust Premium members. And so basically the way it was done, and I can't really tell from Circle here, is it's a live retreat where you set aside some time to set yourself up for a certain period of time ahead, whether it's weeks, months, you could even do, 6 months, a quarter. And I believe everyone kind of wanted me to do that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Christina and Joyce would know this. I think we want to do this once a quarter if we can. And the last time we did it was, I want to say it was May. It was December. So that was the last time we did it. And the next one we're going to do will be after the campaign's done. I think we actually have it scheduled already. So it's pretty soon after the campaign ends that we're going to go into the Ready Retreat. I just have to take a look here on the calendar. I think it might be in the summer, but you set aside a time of day to work through it live if you want, or you can do the recording, and you get access to the recording forever and ever. Joyce is right. It's like reflection is a piece of it, what you want to do, what you need to do, all that stuff. And then, of course, like I was mentioning, and I'll go back to the Kickstarter page here. We're now at 11, which is great. We're almost, so if we take a look here, you can see if you get to, and of course I'm not down to the bottom yet. So the highest, or the second highest tier, is Time Crafting, the Book Bundle Plus. So it gets you a signed paperback copy of the book, which I will then mail to you. But you get annual membership in Time Crafting Trust Premium, which is a $99 value. And what that does is you get access to things like the Focus Fix sessions that we do, which we just did literally during the just before our party today. We did it. So there's that. There's access to all the courses, both that are in the learning library, so things that are active, as well as the archives. I think we had a member just do the Beyond Productivity course that I did a number of years ago. It's like a 3-part program, which was the genesis of time crafting and the Now Year method and all that stuff was from that. So they just took it, and it's interesting to see the journey. Also, you get access to ad-free podcast, monthly challenges, and there's more to come because the community is getting a lot more focus as we grow. And so that's really helpful. In fact, people who are at the lifetime level, and thanks, Joyce, it is, I really love being, I love the Community Time Crafting Trust Premium. And once you buy a program from me, you get inside of the Time Crafting Trust Circle community. It's the premium that gets you access to all the courses, the Focus Fix sessions, the office hours, all that stuff. And for those that are lifetime members, they're going to get copies, all 3 versions of the book, as lifetime members. And I think lifetime membership right now is still $399. So that would give you access forever to Time Crafting Trust Premium. Plus you'll get the 3 copies of the book. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know. I'll put the link to that in the chat. We had 1 or 2 additional people when I announced it in the community jump to the lifetime level, which is great. So we've got a lot of people that are talking about the campaign so far. So hopefully we'll get some more backers as we make our way through, but I'm quite happy with the way things are going just to kick things off. We are now at $920 towards our goal. So like 1/7 of the way there. Oh, there we go. There's more backing happening. So I'm really excited for the way things are shaping up. I'm waiting to see if Eric is going to hop on the call here. We had Eric Fisher, but I'm using Ecamm Live. Maybe there's a technical issue going on. But I was going to have Eric Fisher pop on, and we've got another guest that is likely going to pop on. Let me just message Eric real quick and see if he's going to join us. Any questions you have about the book or the campaign or the process? If you do, and you're in the live stream right now, please go ahead and ask. We've got a handful of people in the chat right now. When we talk about the diet book, there are going to be some stretch goals too. And I will, I'm not going to announce what they are here because I don't know what, but I know the first stretch goal, I believe, is once we hit $10,000. Once we hit $10,000, then there is a stretch goal will get triggered. And I think the subsequent ones are at, I think 15 and then 25. So Gloria, there you go. Gloria Jean, good to see you. Appreciate you being here during the live stream as well. Will there be an accompanying website with materials related to the book? So I own theproductivitydiet.com. I actually own that. I've owned it for a long time. I had somebody actually try to buy it from me a few years ago, and I kept it. So I think it's either I own theproductivitydiet.com and I also own productivity.diet, I believe. And so ultimately, we will be building more stuff related to the book as the campaign, kind of makes our way through. So the whole, a friend of mine, Phil Simon, who's been on the podcast before, he actually runs his own self-publishing arm, and that's one we're also maybe looking at. And he just released his latest book called The 9, which is another interesting read. He is very prolific. He's released a lot of books over the last couple of years. And when I was talking to him about the process that we're in, because the first draft's done, we're now in the editing phase. He said, "Oh yeah, you should be able to get the book out by the date November," and that's what we've put in there is November. And I really want to have the book come out before January for sure, because you're going to need that November to January frame is a good time to start dedicating your energy to productivity. Okay, so Eric just saw my email, so. Yes, Mike, and I'll get to that. Thanks for being here, Mike, by the way. Another person who's been a great supporter along the way. So because the book is now in that editing phase, there is a lot of stuff that my team and I will be able to do in the background, and that includes building supporting materials for the site, getting, once we get a chapter solidified, or maybe a couple chapters solidified, bonus materials that, download the first chapter for free, those kind of things that are pretty common. That's the kind of thing that we're thinking about doing. And that will be something that happens, behind the scenes. But the good news is, as backers, anybody who's backing is going to get notifications about all this stuff. Again, like I said off the top of the call, I might have been muted when I said this, but I have seen enough Kickstarter campaigns to know one thing for sure, and I've actually have a couple of friends that are in Kickstarter that either ran their own Kickstarter campaigns. Some actually run campaigns for others, like the Monk Manual and things like that. That communication throughout the process is huge. I think that's massive. Okay, so Eric's going to join me here in a minute, and we might even have him joining at the same time as our other guest. As we, we're about the halfway mark of the live stream here. So, all that stuff. Hey, here's what potential covers are going to look like. Hey, we're building. There's been with the playbook. For those of you that bought it, there were plays with it. Well, with a diet book that has diet in the title, you could probably feel that there's a lot of things that we can do around that for materials for the book. So yes, that's something, Chase, that we're going to be looking at. Don, thanks. And by the way, you get a recording of the Ready Retreat too. So if you can't be there live, then, and I'll probably ask people who backed it, like when would be a good date, give a few options. So don't feel like you're taking, if you're taking a slot for backers, I don't think that's going to be a huge deal. So if you want to back it at that level, feel free. And actually, if you want to back at the highest the annual membership level, you're going to get access to the Ready Retreat, I believe, anyway. So there is that to consider. All right, Mike. So who is the ideal customer for the book? Great question. So it's funny. I just actually literally today, you mentioned GTD enthusiast executives. The ideal customer for this book is somebody who is feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount that they have to accomplish or feel that they have to accomplish in a day. And they're overwhelmed to the point where they can't stay consistent with their productivity. So they're trying, and it's just, there's no level set. There's no sustainability with their levels of productivity. Now, that can't necessarily say, oh, it's for C-suite executives, and that's the tricky part, is that I could have said, this is the demographic I'm going after, and it's, GTD enthusiasts, it's C-suite executives, it's stay-at-home parents. But realistically, it's for the people who are overwhelmed and know that checking off all the boxes isn't the right answer, but they don't know what the right answer is. And I find that when I work with people, that there is a lot of validation and or permissiveness that comes out of it, where people are treating themselves with a bit more grace. The old idea that you can do a lot, you can accomplish more in a week than you think, but the idea of what you can do in a day, we often overestimate, that old adage. So that's who I'm really going after, are people who are like, and the title of the book itself, I think, is huge. And we've got Eric joining here. So we'll jump on here and I'll get Eric to join us here in a second. But the idea here is for the people who are overwhelmed and feel like they want a framework or an approach that is not just sustainable, but it's simple, flexible, and durable. And understanding that they've been fed a whole bunch of stuff, like this is how productivity is. And my idea is, look, productivity is kind of broken, and productivity isn't what you think it is. So if you follow this framework, this approach, and you look at it from the perspective of diet, I think you're going to be in much better shape. So that's kind of where we're at. And the positioning of the book will probably be more defined by this process of going through the self-publishing house as well, because they have a marketing team. Any of them that I work with will help with some of that positioning. All right, let's get Eric on. Well, and we will add you to let's add you to left. There we go. Eric, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes. Sorry,
okay.
I was on mute.
The delay in you. Everyone, Eric Fisher. We've got a good handful of people here in the live stream. Eric, thanks for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah. Hey, I love that you're doing this, and I'm glad to be here.
So we are now at just, and I'm going to, I mean, you won't be, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, Eric, but if you're looking at the Kickstarter page, so we're at 1,000. We're 1/7 of the way there and we've only been live for a little less than an hour. So
that's amazing.
I'm pretty happy about that, especially considering that we're looking at a 28-day campaign. We're actually ending the campaign on World Productivity Day, which is June 20th. As you and I have had this discussion before. Like,
that's a Tuesday, not a Monday.
Well, and the thing is, the reason it's called World Productivity Day for everybody here is because it's the first day of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Like, that's it. Like, it's the longest day, air quotes, of the year. So I've always wanted to do something on that day, and so I'm like, okay, well, let's end this on the first day of something else. So.
Yeah. Well, and that gives me like 3 different thoughts at the same time.
Sure.
So one, that it's like saying the most productive day is the day that has the most available time in it, which is, I can see pros and cons with that approach, first off. Number 2, I think it's nice that if it's the first day of summer, that is a great day to kick off productivity into a new season, relaxing / doing different things over the summer, et cetera, or having time off if you're somebody that the summer affords you that time off. So
right. Well, and the other thing that I really like when we were putting this campaign together, and this has not been like an overnight thing. Like, we've kept our eyes open. I mean, the one thing about doing something like this versus, say, the Focus Timer that Dave has done, or the Ugmonk stuff that Jeff Sheldon's done, is there's not a lot of like machinery or parts. Like, it's a book. It's a book, and the difference is I didn't want it to be I'm writing a book. It's like the book is written. The book's done. Like, we just need to get it out there. So, and that was one thing I definitely want to do, which is like the Brandon Sanderson thing. But the other thing is May is apparently one of the most successful times to run a Kickstarter campaign, typically.
Interesting.
That's what the research has shown. And I looked at like Craig Maude, who's done one. Other people have run them, and May is typically the best day. As well, launching on a Tuesday is a good day. Tuesday, like webinars, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Those are good days to run it. But the other thing that I thought about is, most people are like, well, why would you, we almost did something like this last summer where we're going to do a campaign. I'm like, but the summer is when people are thinking about productivity. And that's fair. But I think by running the campaign this way, by the time the campaign's done on June 20th, there's like a 2-month to 3-month window of updates, supporting materials that people who have backed the campaign are going to be able to have access to. Some of the perks, again, the Ready Retreat, the what's it called? The Ready Retreat, of course, is one. There's the membership to Time Crafting Trust Premium. Like, those will happen right as soon as the pledges are collected. Like, okay, there you go. Now you have access to this. So even though the deliverables related to the book are November 2023 is the date that I've kind of earmarked for that, there's a lot that's going to be able to happen between June 20th and when that book comes out, which I think is really important.
Yeah, that's a really good call. And I hadn't heard that stat about May, but I think that does make a lot of sense in terms of
there's not many. There's one holiday in May for most countries, and it would be like yesterday was Victoria Day here in Canada, and then Memorial Day is happening in the States. But there's a long gap between Easter and Memorial Day where there's not typically a lot of holiday time happening. So that's a likely reason why. But we're doing okay. We're over 1,000. We're at 16 backers already, which I'm happy with. And we haven't even hit like I've still got emails to send to like Michael Hyatt and Tiago with all the fresh links. The one thing about that I don't know if you've ever noticed, Eric, and I'd love to hear thoughts from people in the comments, is when you're doing when you back a Kickstarter campaign, you get the preview page. There's not a lot there. The preview page is basically like, I'm doing this thing and that's it. We got Mike Schmitz getting ready to jump on the call here, Eric. So we'll probably wrap up here in a minute. Before I let you go, and again, thanks for taking the time to jump on today. Ecamm seems to actually have pretty good ability to do this kind of stuff. I love Ecamm. We've talked about this idea of the productivity diet for a while. We were actually talking before about how I bought the domains, and it's one of the domains I've held on to. So when you think of the term, the productivity diet, and related to what I've talked to you about, like what comes to mind for you?
Well, that word diet is a loaded word, like the word productivity. But the word diet is like, okay, it's a fad. It's a, I'm going to do this for a week or the whole 30, right? It's a diet for 30
Yep.
days.
Yep.
But instead of, I like to try and think of diet and even productivity for that matter as words that are similar to the difference between weather and climate. Where
Right.
climate is kind of the long term, usually what it's like, and weather can vary from day to day. And you kind of live in between the friction between both those things. And
Absolutely.
so diet is like, okay, I can do a fad diet, I can do a cleanse, I can do something temporary. But if you're not thinking about the long term stuff, and the day in, day out, this is how I eat, this is my diet consists of, it would be the context statement or sentence if we were in English class, that you would go with that. And that's really, you got to think about it not as the short-term micro, but the long-term macro.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it changes over time too. Like what a diet looks like for you at age 20 will look different for you at age 50. Right.
Yes.
And
yes.
so does productivity.
Yes.
Right?
The Pop-Tarts don't cut it anymore. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to let you go, Eric. Before you do you want to, can you drop something and just drop your podcast link in the chat, like on YouTube, so that way people can, you may not be able to do it right from here, but, again, beyond the to-do list, Eric, you've had a self-published book in the past as well, right? Ready, Aim,
years
Fire,
ago.
right? Yeah. It's still available. But yeah, thanks so much for taking the time, and I appreciate you.
No problem.
You joining me. And maybe I'll pop on your podcast during the campaign or something like that. Maybe do a bonus episode.
I think you will very soon. Actually, yes.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Eric. Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
All right. We got Mike Schmitz joining, and Don, you're right. Apps and tools, and don't have an actual system in place. Constantly app hopping. I wonder if we're going to see that with AI as well. I actually wrote something about, and this is related to, I'll bring Mike on because I think this would be a good topic of conversation about like the idea of absolutes. And I think that that's so dangerous in a lot of ways. But yeah, and the nice thing about the productivity diet is it kind of works for, again, it's going to change over time. And one of the things, and Mike, you brought this up, the idea of GTD. And I think that getting things done gets misconstrued a lot as like you have to follow by the letter. David would even say that. And I actually have the recording of David and me doing, David Allen and myself having that conversation in Lisbon. But, and that came up, I believe. But the way I approach my teachings and productiveness and cultivating a better relationship with time is that, and this comes across in the book for sure, and I'll let Mike join us here. I'm going to put him in the green room. Is there is no, like, you don't have to be doing it all to be doing it. I think that's the key. And I'm going to move, Mike's going to be on the right. Here's Mike Schmitz. Thanks for joining me, Mike. Appreciate it.
How's it going?
Not too bad. Sure. So we'll do a quick update here for everyone that's, so we are now at, we're 1/7 of the way there we haven't even been live for an hour now. So I'm happy with this. Of course, if you have any questions or anything and you're on the live stream, let me know. Mike, I got an email from you today. I think a lot of people did. Can you share with the people watching live or the recording a little bit about what you've been doing and what that email might have been about?
Yeah, you and the rest of the Creators Guild guys ganged up on me and made me quit my job. No, just kidding. Kind of not really. Yeah, for the last year and a half, I've been integrator at a digital marketing agency and kind of compartmentalized in this mastermind together for a while with David and a couple other guys. So every week we talk about the stuff that we're making, and eventually that model just wasn't compatible with my brain. I started to see myself as a full-time creator, partially because that's what everybody else was, and I realized that that's really where I came alive. So as of last Monday, I'm no longer at the day job. I'm going to be a independent creator / business consultant. I've learned a lot about business and operations and feel like I have a lot to help lot of ways I can help creative entrepreneurs specifically, but yeah, in terms of like the creative stuff, next big thing I'm doing is
Is a form of attention. Like it is. And
Yep.
there is no, this is like, cause you've worked with Asian Efficiency, you've worked with Sean Blanc, you've worked across the gamut with, and the thing is that I think it's really important that there's some fundamentals that we take as we make our way through all these different, vocations, and jobs and even careers for some. But so you focus on the fundamentals, and then you get to add some of the, the flair to the mix, right? And I think that one of the things, Don mentioned this in the chat. He said, too many people focusing on apps and tools and don't have an actual system in place. They're constantly app hopping. So you bring up Obsidian. There's a lot of people who love the sizzle of like these tools, but if they don't know how to fundamentally, if they're not fundamentally sound with what their approach is, then it's the equivalent of, and I mean, I mentioned that, my first book, The Front Nine, uses golf as a metaphor, very loosely. But the idea is if I went golfing with my brother, who's a great golfer, I could have the best clubs in the world and he would still, frankly, kick my ass, even if he was using the crappiest clubs, because he has the fundamentals down. And I think that that's something that's really key. And that's what I'm trying to stress with the book, The Productivity Diet, is, people talk about, I don't really like writing how-to stuff necessarily because I think it does vary. But if I'm going to write a how-to book, this is the one to write because, again, hacks only take you so far. In fact, the term hack, I think we've talked about this before. The word hack comes from the idea that to cut without care. So when you think about a hack, it's like, you want to cut without care? Wouldn't you want to cut with care? Like, wouldn't you want to at least be careful as you cut? And so to me, I think that's something that we all learn, and there's it's a process. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to bring to life with not just this live stream, but with the book in general and the Productivity Diet process is this idea that it's not a one and done, right? And none of this stuff is.
Yeah. I got a different version of the tools don't matter story for you. So I'm a musician. I have hanging on my wall behind me a very nice guitar that I paid over $1,000 for. But it occurred to me that until I put in the time to master the craft, it doesn't matter how good the guitar is. It's not going to sound very good. Yep. And you take the cheapest little electric guitar, the $100, Walmart special, give it to Eric Clapton, and he can make that thing sing because he's put in the time and he's done the work. He's done the scales. He's practiced enough that like the tool doesn't really matter.
Right.
And with electric guitar stuff, there's a whole big rabbit hole you can go down with like the amps and the effects. And you're always like, if I get this thing, it'll help me like click into my sound and it's going to unlock all this stuff. Well, like, no, you still got to follow the process. If you don't know your scales, you can't solo. You can't, so, I've fallen into that rabbit hole, and I know other people have too, where you buy like thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, you think apps are expensive. Try buying, musical gear, thousands of dollars worth of stuff. And ultimately it doesn't make you any better at your instrument.
No, and that's I think we all fall prey to that too with the technology that we have, right? Like, I mean, I can look around my study and go, did I really need that thing? Or am I even going to use it to its fullest potential? Maybe not. And I think one of the things that theming has helped with me, and that's something that comes in the book, Theming Your Time, is it gives me space and time to focus on those things that I want to get better at. And I talked about this before you jumped on, but this idea of this feeling of validation or even permissiveness to be able to go, oh, I can do that. Like theming a day, like saying, yeah, like today is my media day. Oh, what's that mean? It means my overarching focus goes to like media. I'm making media right now. We're literally doing a live video, and I've got 2 podcast interviews a little later today, and all that stuff is, and what that does is it creates and cultivates certainty in time and space that you wouldn't necessarily have unless you decide that you want to have it. You make choices around that and create boundaries. And again, like a diet, you could be really rigid with it. I remember working with Well, I know you train for marathons and stuff, right? Like half marathons and things like that. Like
Half marathon.
half
I'm only
marathons.
half crazy.
You're only half crazy. But I mean, when you're in that modality, you can't just train. You could just train leading up to it and that's it. But if you want to consistently get better, or at least be able to, because you're not necessarily competing with anybody else, you're competing with yourself at best, or you're just doing it because, hey, I love doing it. It's better to do that consistently over an extended period of time, as opposed to, oh, I have a half marathon in a month, I better start training now, right? So it's about doing it sustainably and consistently, not just consistently.
Now you're pushing all my buttons with the running stuff. I mean, this totally maps to the approach to diet too. I think like exercise and diet go hand in hand. A lot of people talk about it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I'll tell the short version of this story to respect your time, but like I remember the first half marathon I ran, I just had this goal. I'm like, I'm going to run this half marathon. If I can do this, it's the ultimate test of mind over matter for me. I'd always played sports and stuff in high school and college, but running was boring. Who does that? You know, especially in Wisconsin where it snows 8 months out of the year. Like you don't want to have to run outside. So you're on a treadmill. Like it's terrible, but I did it. And I spent like a year and a half training, and I actually overtrained.
Mm-hmm.
And my patella tendon slipped off my kneecap. It was on the side of my leg. So the when I ran it, you know, it hurt, but I'm like, I'm going to finish this because I've trained so long for this. And I remember crossing the finish line, and you go through the line and put the medal around your neck, and like really even wasn't out of the chute and just felt depressed. I was like, now what? Right. So and I think a lot of people think of diet the same way. It's like, well, I'm going to reach my weight goal. I'm going to crash and just eat salads for the next 4 weeks. But the better approach is to really just learn to love the process.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about a productivity diet, it's not like, well, I'm going to do the things that I hate to do for a short period of time until I get a handle on things. It's like, I'm going to reinvent my lifestyle.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I had to do with running is, you know, I had to go through physical therapy. I couldn't, you know, sign up for another race right then. Either that or surgery. I chose physical therapy, and I still run my half marathons, but I'm not worried about like the time or the distance necessarily. I just like going for a run. It's completely changed my relationship with it. And I remember the year of COVID, I logged like over 1,000 miles running or something like that, because I wasn't trying to get to a point and it was, you know, suffering until I got to the goal. It was just, hey, this is fun.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing which is worth noting, especially when it comes to like diet, and I bring this up in the book, is what do most people do? They stand on a scale, right? They'll stand on a scale, but the scale doesn't tell the full story either, right? Like how much you weigh versus, let's say, body mass. Like again, and I stress this off the top, I don't know a lot about this stuff, so I don't lean heavily into it, but I do know that when I was working with my trainer, he wasn't concerned so much about like how many pounds I weighed. He was more like, let's look at your body mass index. Let's look at those things, because you're going to hit a point where you're training and you're exercising and you're eating right, but you won't be dropping the scale won't represent that. Right. Yeah. And we see that a lot with productivity. Like inbox zero is like the bane of my existence. Right. Because people are like, oh, I got my email to zero. I'm like, yeah, but was that
who cares?
Is your job strictly to answer email all day? If it is, great. And that's the other, we talked a little bit about this before you jumped on, the idea of absolute. And I alluded to it. Yeah. And I wrote this little snippet in drafts, which I will move into Obsidian, and make sure you put a link to Obsidian University before we wrap up. But I wrote down, I think it was the idea of, here we go. Distributed. So one of the things that came up was a distributed workforce. Like people are talking now, we're seeing more about like, oh, everyone's got to get back to the office. Everyone's got to get back to the office. Or, and I was at a conference called Running Remote. It's like, oh, we're going to be completely remote. I'm like, neither of those are the ideal. Like a balanced approach, a distributed workforce might be the way to go. AI, we've talked about this. We've got some stuff cooking that is related to AI, you and I, that we will be releasing probably. Let's put it this way. As soon as this campaign ends, you're probably going to hear more from me and Mike a little bit later. But the point is that people are like, they're going either all in on AI or they're like avoiding it like crazy. I'm like, well, again, there's no absolute on either side. And I think that's what, I mean, when I was doing research for the book, when I was even writing recently, and I alluded to this article I wrote for Simplify magazine, productivity, quantitative productivity is not necessarily the complete answer. It's not, and nor qualitative. Like the evolution of productivity was, this idea of making really great stuff, but you couldn't make a lot of it because we didn't have the technology. Well, now we have the technology. And so everyone's like, well, screw the quality, or it's not paramount. We're going to make a lot of stuff. So I'm noticing, and I think there's a push towards this, not as great as I'd love to see, but this balance between quality and quantity. And that's really what a diet's about. Like, most people, I'm going to go run, I'm going to do this. Yeah. But if you eat garbage, then that's not a balanced approach. That's going to keep things out of whack. And the idea behind this book is to have an approach that people can use so that they, quote, stay in whack, I guess, more than get out of whack.
I like that. And I think the diet thing, there's two ways you can approach these types of things. You can view it as like, well, I have to do this because I want to be free from the excess weight, the burning desire to do this thing. That's one type of freedom. But in my opinion, that's the lower level of freedom. The other version is freedom 2. And that's kind of what I did with running. That's what you do with a diet. And I would encourage people to take that approach with their productivity. It's not like I have to do these things, but I get to do these things. And you don't have to do, or you shouldn't choose to do all of the things, right? Figure out for yourself what really moves the needle, and then quit looking out there somewhere someday. Now, there's this concept of the gap versus the gain, where you take where you're at, and this is what I was doing when I was running, and I was measuring where I was. Let's see if I can get this visually, and then there's like the ideal, right? The thing up here that you're looking forward to, the goal that you set, and no matter how hard you work or how great you do, you're never going to get there fast enough. It's never going to be good enough. And you measure yourself, that distance between where you are to where you want to be or where you think you should be. That's the gap. And you get frustrated, right? But if you can look at where you started and compare that to where you are, so you can look back and you can reflect on, like, see how much that I've grown, right? Because of the things that I've done, that creates the motivation to keep going. And it's the little things, the 1% improvements. I'm going to start doing this thing because it's interesting to me, and I want to practice gratitude journaling, right? So I do that, and consistently, you don't see the results day to day, but you look back after a while and you're like, wow, it's really made a positive difference.
Mike, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Make sure you throw in the YouTube comments before we wrap up Obsidian University stuff, because I have to say, and I actually have this queued up in an email that's going to go out to people who are subscribed, but I started to use Obsidian more during the writing process, simply because it, the quote, when thoughts become things, like Obsidian helps me do that better than some of the other tools I've used in the past. Some that were good at it and aren't necessarily good at it any longer. And then there's a deluge. I think that's the other thing too, when it comes to tools. There's so many, it takes somebody who's used them to show you how they can benefit you, and that's something you do with Obsidian. So yeah, let's drop that in the comments and people can check it out. I know that I think it's kicking off when? June 12th, I think.
June 12th, yep.
Yeah.
So if you want to hop on, that'd be great to have you. And the thing that really clicked with me, and what I'm hoping to help people do, is like actually use it to create something of value, not teach you all of the different things and create this perfect system of like, this is everything that Obsidian will do, right? But find one practical use case, one way it can make your life better, and use it for that. Because I think it is a great creative tool.
Absolutely. Hey, Mike, I'm going to let you go because we're going to wrap up the live stream here in a minute or two. But thanks again for taking the time to join me today. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, awesome. Everybody go buy Mike's book. I did. I'm part of that 1,020 Canadian dollars that you showed earlier.
Well, now we're at $1,286. We have 21 backers, so we've seen more. Mike, thanks again so much for taking the time today, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right, see ya.
All right, so as we get close to wrapping up the live stream, let me know that you're still here. If you're still here, just say, yep, I'm here. And if you've backed, I'd love to hear from you. Again, if you want to back the campaign, I'm going to type in here, really get back the campaign. I think I should be able to, I think it'll just be the same. Yep, there you go. So if you've already backed the campaign, thank you so much. And yeah, we're at We're basically, it looks like we're 1/5 of the way to funding already in the first hour. Now I've got some more stuff to do. I've got 2 podcast interviews lined up today. You're going to see some more stuff mentioned as we go over the next 27 days that are left in the campaign. I'm really excited. I want to thank everybody for joining in on the live stream today, whether you're watching it live, whether you're watching the recording. Thanks so much, Edward, for backing the campaign. Vanessa, everybody that's backed the campaign so far. Thanks for joining me. I'm really excited. And we're literally 1,346. So we just had another backer join us. So again, thank you so much for taking the time. You can find everything in the description, of course, the comments, all that stuff. And the next time I do a live stream, maybe it'll be like the celebration on the 20th to celebrate the end of the campaign and a successful campaign at that. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me today. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you later. Cheers.